Hey people, Shaman here. I'm going to talk a little bit about food. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I call the healing power of the earth. You know, the food's a big issue these days. Well, it's an issue every day. I mean, we need it to survive and so on. But these days, and I'm trying to make this channel not so much conspiracy theory stuff, but the fact is, we are in a huge psyop war, and I'm going to post a link with Dr. Malone, on that and how he explains why. But it's the truth, okay? And one of the things involved in that is the control over food, and this is really important. Not just that, but the other things that we've been dealing with over the last 3 years. And in that, I'm going to tell you guys a kind of a quick story that had a great impact on me, and my farming and gardening practices and just how I think about food and the earth in general. Now, I mean, I've been in shamanism most of my adult life, since 1978, when I finished my apprenticeship. And I've learned so many things about not just plants and herbologies and natural medicines and so on, but how you could really read the earth and read the region and how people in that region would be affected by what you see growing on the ground in the wild. In different areas, you'll look at different plants that are natural medicines, and then also find out that people in that region are suffering from the illnesses that plant can cure. And if you see in the springtime, let's say a lot of these plants that you don't normally see come up, let's say you see more dandelions than you ever see in your life just spring up. Now, a botanist might say, well, maybe a lot of birds came by, kind of shit out some seeds, and poof, that happened. Well, yeah, you could say that. That's a possibility, of course, but it's kind of interesting if you find out later that people had lots of anger issues, liver issues come up that season, that summer, or you saw that through the fall. And that's the things that plant can work with. And you say, okay, so if we read the earth, here one time when I lived in Bat Cave, North Carolina, just outside of Asheville, one summer we saw so much mullein come up. It was just unbelievable. And I that was the second year I lived there, and people were like, "Oh, that's a lot." And I'm like, "Well, I didn't plant it." Well, that following winter, people had so much respiratory ailments, that were really bothering the population in that area, and the mullein sprung up for that. Lots of earaches, mullein sprung up for that. So you can read the earth like that. Well, you can't read the earth in highly developed areas where they have lots of landscaping and, or like I lived in one place that had a homeowners association. Certain plants, shrubs, trees were illegal. I'm not talking about weed or anything, just different shrubs. And so you can't read the earth like that. But in the rural areas, like where I'm at here in Central Texas, you can. This is the 4th year here. So in that, I want to go ahead and talk about a time when I was renting a farm in South Alabama, Alberta, Alabama. And the owner of the farm had another pasture next to mine where he kept his cows for his cheese, operation. And some big, beautiful roses were there along the fence line, that were planted. But then there was this other vine that had these smaller roses in groups of 3s. And I was looking at them, and I went up and smelled them. It's just the strongest fragrance, so sweet, beautiful smell. And I'm like, my God. So I asked him about that. I'm like, hey, so what kind of a hybrid are those? And he just laughed at me. He goes, boy, those aren't the hybrids. The big, beautiful ones around them, those are the hybrids. He goes, do you notice that those big ones don't have any smell to them? They just look pretty. I'm like, yeah, I did notice that. And I said, what do you mean the 3 small ones are not the hybrids? He goes, no, that's what the rose looks like. They changed them to make them big and beautiful for the American market. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. He says, you have some roses on your property too. I said, yeah. He says, when they get that big stem that's going out, take that just let it grow. Shave off some of the green around it, the bark or whatever you call it. Put that down on the ground and put some dirt over top of it to hold it there. And the original species will come out the other side. He says, you can't do this with one that's got a bulb on it because that's already the action. Make sure you don't see any bulbs or any leaves that are sprouting up, just that shoot. I'm like, all right. And I did that with one of my reds. And just like he said, what came out from the other side, from where I had that part cut and put in the earth, was the original species, a small, darker red rose with a beautiful fragrance. Now, from the same plant that this shoot sprung off from, were the big red flowers with no smell. The leaves the petals on the flower of the other one, the original, were tough, hard to tear. The ones on the big flowers from the same plant, easy to tear. You get easily plucked off, easily ripped apart. Weak flower, big and weak. Big, pretty, and weak with no smell. The others were strong, darker, not as colorful, like a deeper, almost dried blood red, but very, very fragrant. And I looked at that. I'm like, in my simple country boy mind, it was like the earth healed that plant and took it back to normal. Now, see, there's different ceremonies that different indigenous cultures will do where they pretty much bury you. Yeah, you have an air vent, and I've gone through some similar things, and you just kind of like, you're in the ground for a while to be healed. We would do it on the beach in Miami. You know, bury yourself in the sand and just lay there and watch the sun come up. You know, and when you come out of there, it's a different feeling. You come up and you rinse the sand off of you. You let the earth heal you. And actually, sand has a really interesting thing about that. And Wilhelm Reich, the father of organ therapy, he knew that. So, in understanding your garden, and even if it's a container, the process of saving the seeds, the process of peeing around your plants, because your piss is one of the best fertilizers you can get. You know, of course, that goes against Obama's Food Modernization Safety Act, but fuck him, you know. But the point of it is you get to know your garden and you know your food. You know, it's interesting. A long time ago, I was working with some different groups, and Hymo Storm, you know, was a big leader back then in the spirit world, or the spiritual world. And he came to one of the groups I was working with, and he said, you know, if you really want to see and learn about life, go to your garden and just pick up a handful of that soil and look. If you've got a good garden, that's a community. And it really is. You know, when you see all the life in that, and you're part of that, and when you're eating your vegetables and your fruits or whatever you're cultivating, you're eating out from that community. Well, that's not true when you go buying this food from the stores. You know, your big industrial farm supplied stores. The local garden's a different story. And when you're doing like organic, I do organic. I don't use a tiller. I don't use any machines. It's all by hand, shovel, rake. And it's my energy is going to each of the garden beds. And I have to be out there to cultivate. I have to be out there to do my natural pesticides because the rain washes them off. They don't have the same chemical adhesion. And so I'm doing that. So that's me out there. And I understand the land. I understand what's happening in the soil. And the weeds will tell me which is the best plants to crop the next year. In that, if I have really soft, flexible grass growing up in off season like right now, I know that that bed is ready for lettuce, ready for the softer greens. Speaking of which, I'm going to mention that over the last 2 years I've been gardening here in Central Texas. You know, I was buying some different seeds from different places, including seeds of change. You know, because I wanted the organic ones and some heirloom stuff. I've planted over thousands of seeds. Not one lettuce seed has ever come up in the last couple of years in this location. And I'm real good at growing lettuce. It's one of my favorite crops to grow. It's not really that nutritious, But for some reason, I just like doing that. I tried selling it one time when I lived in Alabama doing my farm work. Don't do it as a cash crop. I could get into a long list of reasons why. It's just not worth it. But but if you want to do something good for cat squash. But anyway, the point of it is it's important for people to know this story, like I told about the healing properties of the earth, because as we're dealing with things like mRNA experiments, that we didn't consent to, but yet mandated to participate in, and I didn't, and I won't, it starts to change our humanity. One of the things with the whole World Economic Forum, they're talking about transhumanism. They really out there to change us. Well, the consciousness of Earth, or what we like to call the shamanic flow, doesn't want that to happen. It took a long time to get us the way we are. And we're not a bad species at all. Some of our practices and habits are, but we as a species are not a bad one. If anything, I have a lot of hope for humanity. I've seen some of the best of humanity come out in the worst of places. So just think about that. Just think about what I said with those roses and understand. Well, when you think about that story, how does it resonate with you? I mean, a lot of people I tell it, they're like, wow, yeah. Okay, that's a consciousness that's dealing. There's something, the ground, the road, whoever, there's some kind of an agreement there. It says something's wrong. Let's just put this back the way it's supposed to be, the way it was originally designed. Let's do that. And boom, it goes. Now, there's some parts of genetically modified organisms that happen naturally. Corn is a good one. Corn was just a scraggly grass. But over 10,000 years of cultivation, all of a sudden it comes into a beautiful plant with large kernels and so on, and it's in its natural variety. Of course, the synthetic GMO of corn is not so good. And coincidentally, and of course I'm going to always say coincidentally, that's my disclaimer, because my last channel, Shamanic Lodge, have years of videos, but that's definitely shadow bound. Coincidentally, when Monsanto did the open air terminator gene, meaning that the pollen, goes out with the message of do not procreate. Now, it used to be for millennium that you could take that corn and you take your biggest and best cobs of corn and you let them dry, because you're going to take those seeds and plant them next year. And that's how you improve your crop. You're always planting the best seeds. With my squash or anything else, my very best plant, I'm just going to let that grow and just go to seed. And I'll plant those seeds this following year. And so anyways, it's just coincidentally, with these seeds, when you plant them, they will not grow. And you have to sign this contract with Monsanto, a 5-year contract, using all their chemicals. And by the way, at the end of 5 years, that land won't grow anything except their stuff, because it's that dead. All right, it becomes a totally synthetic operation. But when people started eating these seeds that are programmed with do not procreate, infertility spiked, just skyrocketed, spiked in the United States and throughout the world. Coincidentally. Now, some suspicious people out there would say, maybe the message was just translated across from food into whoever ate it. Speculation, I'm sure. No scientific proof at all. No links. Nah. Just me being suspicious. People, get out there, do your grounding. Walk barefoot where you can. Take in the sunrise, take in the fresh air. Go sit next to a creek. I'm sorry, that was my West Virginia English. Sit next to a creek or a stream and just enjoy that. Okay, lay on the ground, look up at the sky. Put your phone down for a little bit. Now more than ever, human beings need to get back in contact with the earth. All right, and participate in nature. Forget that you came from Don't forget you came from nature. You need to always remember that, and you'll return to it at the end of this life, in spirit form and in physical form. Sounds like I need to go feed some people, the feathered people. Catch you guys later.